Holocaust, Blitzkrieg, ration books. Rosie the Riveter, maybe on Sunday she goes to church wearing a pin that when she raises it up has a picture of her husband or her son who's in the war. World War II is going to be the most destructive conflict in human history, with over 70 million people dying in a 6-year period. It is going to be disruptive. It's going to set the stage for so much of what comes after that. But how did it start? That's a good question, and I think that's what I want to look at real quick. World War II, the roots of World War II actually began with World War I. In fact, the alliances are going to be the same. The Axis powers were the old Central powers. The Allied powers were the Grand Alliance during World War I. And so, with the exception of Italy switching sides, which actually Italy started with supporting Germany and switched sides during World War I, they go back to their original side. And so you see this, it's basically, in one sense, looks like a continuation of the First World War. And a lot of historians look at it that way because the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I really set the stage, the groundwork for what's going to become the World War II. All right, and it does this in a couple different ways. First of all, a lot of the old empires, a lot of the old order are done away with. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire is gone. The Russian Empire is gone, and the German Empire is turned into the Weimar or the German Republic. This creates a lot of political instability, and anytime you have instability, you have the opportunity for opportunism, particularly from very ambitious people like Adolf Hitler was. And so what ends up happening, in Germany especially, at the end of the war, was very dissatisfied with the treaty. They went into treaty negotiations thinking that they were going to be treated equally because that's what President Woodrow Wilson had promised them. And instead, when they get there, Woodrow Wilson's kind of pushed to the side a little bit, and the negotiators from England and France and Belgium, which are very, very angry at having lost millions of people to the war, are going to be really in charge of negotiations setting up that treaty. And it's going to be extremely harsh. It's going to treat Germany very, very poorly. And I'm not going to question whether or not, or get into a question whether or not Germany deserved it. But I will tell you that some of the things that have happened is that Germany is going to lose a big chunk of their farmland. And as a result of not being able to raise their own food, millions of Germans will starve. And then compound that with Germany loses their most productive coal industrial territory as well. And so their economy is absolutely broken and just shattered by the treaty. And if you're going to rebuild a country, then you need something on which to rebuild it. And those things that you would traditionally do that with, industry and agriculture, are going to be missing from Germany. And in fact, one of the main things that Hitler is going to keep coming back to is this idea of blood and soil, that we need blood and soil to feed our people. In fact, he will invade Poland and he will invade Ukraine because those are extremely fertile areas that could raise a lot of wheat. And he needed that wheat because they literally could not feed all the Germans that were living in Germany. Japan is going to suffer a similar state, and they're going to invade China to make space for all the Japanese that are coming into the world, and they don't have enough space, they don't have enough food for them, so they're going to invade China. So a lot of historians look at World War II as a war over resources, coal and wheat. Add to this, and so they're down, and we get this, right? Okay, and so they're down and out, and add to this, the Germans were impoverished by the war. Their economy is broken, but they owe huge amounts of war reparations to England and France and Belgium and some of these other countries. And this had to be paid, usually in gold, which they didn't have. Their overseas empire has been stripped away from them and given to the English and the French, and they don't have the resources to build this. And so what they do is they start printing money because, hey, you know what? We owe you money, so we're just going to make more money of it. And so as a result, the German mark wasn't really worth very much. They used to say that you could use the mark as toilet paper because it was a better value to do it that way. Toilet paper was too expensive. And it would cost, a million marks to buy a loaf of bread because the mark was just, it was like several 100,000 marks to an American dollar. And so it was ridiculous, called hyperinflation. And so when the United States goes through this, their Great Depression, and their Great Depression spreads over to Europe because of the Harley-Smith Tariff Act, and because the American banks were loaning money to Germany to pay for their war reparations, then the bottom's going to fall out again, and so they are in really, really bad shape. And then along comes this guy. I always call him the little short guy with the bad mustache, although I don't think he was necessarily super short. But Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was a war hero. He was respected, and he was a great orator. And he comes in, and he makes these promises about that Germany can be great, and Germany should be great. It should be a powerful country. He would oftentimes say that there's an old German proverb that you're either the hammer or you're the anvil. And right now we are the anvil, but we're going to take our anvil and we're going to reforge it into a German sword. Very bellicose, very dynamic, and that really fed into that shared German cultural mythology that they had, that they can rise from the dust and then rebuild their nation into a third great empire. They said the first empire was the Holy Roman Empire, the second empire was the German Empire, and that they were going to be the third empire, or the Third Reich. And he really feed it. And then add to that, there was a lot of discontent with the treaty, again going back to that treaty, because the treaty blamed World War I not on the Serbian terrorists or on the Austrians or the Russians who actually moved soldiers first, but actually blamed it all on the Germans. And so there was a lot of personal pride that was damaged. And so when Hitler comes in and says, we're going to make you proud to be German again, that really fed into their desires. And so the first thing he does after he's elected is he begins to ignore the Treaty of Versailles. He starts building up a military. The Treaty of Versailles said you can't have a military. You're only allowed to have so many soldiers. And it actually worked out to be fewer than the number of police officers in New York City. And even then, they can't all have guns. You're not allowed to have any ships above a certain weight. Well, okay, fine. So you're pedaling around in longboats, basically. And it was embarrassing. And for a great nation that they considered themselves to be a great nation, to be so embarrassed. And so they were angry. And Hitler fed into this anger. So he starts rebuilding their navy. He starts rebuilding their air force. He starts rebuilding their army. It starts as a police force. He starts gathering all German-speaking people back to Germany sometimes through elections, sometimes through small invasions or annexations, like Anschluss of Austria. And this was a world history class. We're going all into this, but now he starts gathering people together, and people in Europe didn't want to go to war, and so they kept saying, "Hey, listen, Hitler, you got to stop." And he said, "Okay, well, you know what? I'll stop after Czechoslovakia." And they say, "Okay, fine, you can take Czechoslovakia, just you got to stop after that." And then he invades Poland, and so they go to war. So what are the causes? I'd say it's nationalism. This national pride that the Hitler was able to tap into to really get the German people on his side for the conflict to come, and resources. The fact that the Germans and the Japanese in Asia did not have enough of them. And so they're going to go and get involved in this horrific war, in large part because of those two things. All right, I'll talk to you in a little while. Later.